Thomas and Gordon, the Allied engines, were in disgrace. Gordon had fallen into a ditch and Thomas had fallen down a mine. The Fat Controller had arranged to meet them in order to give them their punishment. As you know, it has taken me a long time to think up of a suitable punishment for you two. But at long last, I have decided. The engines looked miserably at each other. Gordon, you shall not be allowed to board the express. Yes, sir. As for you, Thomas, I shall be taking away your branch line. You're taking away his branch line? Yes, it might teach you to be more humble, Thomas. Rules are there for a reason, and no matter who you are, you can't break them.
But sir, with no one running the branch line, what'll happen to it?
Toby and Percy will run it.
But Toby's new to the line, sir. He'll get...
And that is why Percy is helping him. Between the two of them, they are bound to know the full line. But Percy is... Silence! I do not feel that I need to explain myself to two misbehaving engines.
What'll I do now?
You will shunt and fetch trains for the other engines to take. And he went off to tell Percy and Toby the news. I'm sorry about your branch line, Thomas.
And I'm sorry about your express. Oh, I do hope Percy and Toby will be alright.
When Toby and Percy heard the news, they were delighted.
Of course, sir. We'll run this line like never before.
Glad to hear it. Let me know if you run into any problems. And he hurried away.
So, Percy, what should we do first?
What do you think we should do first?
I think we should go and find out what jobs we need to do.
And they did. Where's Thomas?
He's not allowed on the branch line at the moment.
The station master looked worried. Oh dear, well this contract really couldn't have come at a worse time. There's going to be an important visitor coming to the island, so the mainline engines are busy with the preparations for that. Meanwhile, we're supposed to take over a lot of their freight work, while still taking our own. It was going to be difficult work for 3 engines, but for just 2. Well...
We'd best get started then.
And the station master told them what needed to be done. So, what jobs do you two want to take?
I'll take all of the truck work if you'd like me to.
Really? You'd do that for me?
Of course. I know how much you prefer passenger trains, and quite frankly, I don't mind either way.
Oh, thank you, Toby.
What seemed like a good idea at the time began to look worse and worse. The first engine to find us out was Percy. Within 2 stations, there was a problem.
I've never been this far. Do you know where we're going next?
We just trust Thomas to go the right way. Without him, we're lost! We'll just have to trust the signalman to be competent.
But he wasn't. As Percy came up to a junction, the signalman wasn't paying attention until the last second. With a quick glance, he saw that Percy was leading the train. Percy very rarely pulled passenger trains, and so he switched him onto the quarry line. Percy, who still had no idea which way he was going, blindly followed down the track. When Percy reached the quarry, he was surprised, and so were the passengers. Why on earth have you brought us to a quarry? Do we look like quarry workers to you? Toby wasn't getting on any better either. When he reached the yard, a nasty surprise was waiting for him. A long line of trucks were waiting to be taken. Thomas and Percy would have struggled, but managed this train on their own. But Toby needed help with the bigger jobs. He still hadn't had all his old parts replaced, and so he was much weaker. Furthermore, the line of trucks had its own brake van. Toby was about to switch it with Henrietta, when the foreman stopped him. Come on, I've been told by my boss that you're to take this train quickly. Leave that brake coach there and take this straight away, please.
We better do as he says, Toby.
I'll try and come back for you. Stay safe.
Henrietta put on a brave smile, but she was very worried about Toby. Oh, I hate leaving you like this. Meanwhile, Percy had finally reached his last station. He was very late, the passengers complained and he became more and more miserable. James had been waiting at the platform. Usually he'd be cross, but today he had a broad grin. You know, Gordon falling into that ditch might have been the best thing that's happened to this railway. Well, Besides me joining it, of course.
Well, Thomas falling down that mine is the worst thing that's happened to it.
What do you mean? And why are you so glum? I thought you and Toby had been put in charge.
We have, but I got sent down the wrong line.
Ah, I see. So you can't handle being in charge. Not that I'm surprised, you are, after all, only a tank engine. Percy didn't want James to know he was right.
I can cope, thank you very much. It wasn't my fault. The signalmen are in charge of where we go, not us.
So you don't want me to tell the Fed Controller that you're struggling, then?
No, I don't.
In truth, Percy really wanted the Fat Controller to know he was struggling, but he knew that he'd never hear the end of it from James. Very well then, suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you. And he smugly puffed away.
Please come home, Thomas.
Meanwhile, Toby ached all over. His axles ached, his pistons ached, even his frame ached from the intense weight.
I'm doing it for you, Henrietta. I'm doing it for you.
But the more he went on, the more tired he became. And the more tired he became, the slower he became. Soon he was slithering along at a snail's pace. Eventually, he couldn't go on anymore.
Well, now I'll just have to wait here until someone comes to rescue me.
Meanwhile, Thomas was hard at work. He wanted to show the Fat Controller just how useful he could be, so that he could go back to the branch line. Thomas knew that Toby and Percy would be struggling. After all, they were brand new to the island. Before they had arrived, they took very few trains. As much as he wanted to tell the Fat Controller this, he knew he was in disgrace and therefore wouldn't be listened to by him. Usually, Thomas enjoyed his breaks, but as he finished fetching Gordon's trucks, he could only wish he had more to do, so that he could keep his mind off of things. Gordon could see that Thomas was upset. Thank you, Thomas. You know, I used to wish that you had never gone to the branch line, but after seeing how sorry you are about it, I wish that you could always have it, even now.
Thank you for your support, Gordon, but I'm starting to worry that I may never have it again.
Well, as we both know, the Queen is coming to Sodor. Perhaps when you fetch our coaches, you'll be rewarded with having your branch line back. At the thought of this, a smile returned to Thomas's face.
Thank you, Gordon.
Meanwhile, the Fat Controller was in a panic. He hadn't had any time to sort the preparations for the Queen. Letters, phone calls, and the station master kept interrupting him. They were all complaining about how without Thomas, the branch line was a wreck. I phoned ages ago. Surely it got to someone by now.
I hope Percy hasn't run into trouble too. I don't know what we'd do if both of us were in a mess.
At last, Toby could see lights poking through the shadows.
There you are, Toby. I'm sorry I was so late. Without Thomas here, the branch line's become a disaster.
I couldn't agree more. But what can we do?
Thomas would know.
Later that day, Percy was exhausted. He had been rushing around all day and was now taking a passenger train. With an exhausted peep from his whistle, he set off. Unknown to Percy, the Fat Controller was on board Percy's train. He had come to find out what was going on at the branch line, and it didn't take him long. As Percy approached the station, he was half asleep. By the time he noticed he had to stop for the station, it was already too late. With his brakes screeching, he went straight past the station and stopped a little further up. The Fat Controller got out very crossly. He spoke to Percy. Percy, why did you not stop at the station? Percy awoke with a jump.
I'm sorry, sir. I fell asleep, sir.
Now the Fat Controller was more worried than cross. Why are you so tired, Percy?
Without Thomas around, sir, Toby and I have to work twice as hard. We also don't know the line very well, so sometimes we don't know where we're going. I'm sorry, sir. I would have told you, but I didn't want James to know that he was right about tank engines not being able to run lines.
I shall have to have a word with James. And he headed straight for the sheds. James, I want a word with you. Yes, sir? I hear that you have been winding up engines. I have, sir. You told Percy that he couldn't run his line because he was a tank engine. That meant Percy wouldn't tell me that he was struggling because he didn't want to prove you right. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Now, I understand that you engines often joke about each other, and so you should only be punished for one day. Tomorrow, instead of taking your passenger jobs, you shall work with the trucks. Yes, sir. The next morning, the Fat Controller walked over to the yard. Henry had just been covered in paint, and he needed to find a different engine to take the Queen's train. Gordon and Thomas saw him coming, and both began to speak. Please, sir. One at a time, please. Yes, Gordon? May Thomas have his branch line again? Well, Thomas?
Please, can Gordon pull coaches again?
The Fat Controller had to ponder. On one hand, the two engines hadn't had their punishments for long. On the other, Henry had been covered in paint, and he needed a big, strong engine to pull the Queen's train. He looked at Thomas. He had heard complaints from both passengers, workers, and engines that they needed Thomas back. The line had fallen to pieces without him. Thomas had also not pleaded for his branch line back, and had instead asked for Gordon's punishment to be over. Surely this meant he was not vain anymore. I have reached a decision. Gordon, you shall go back to pulling coaches again, and Thomas, you can return to your branch line.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Also, since you've been very good lately, you'll both deserve a treat. And the two engines listened with great interest. Percy and Toby had both heard the great news and were waiting anxiously for their friend.
There he is! Hip hip!
Hooray! It's good to be back. Now, I still have some time before I need to fix the Queen's coaches. So, what do you say about getting this blasted contract over with?
As long as you're with us.
We'll do the best we can.
From then on, things went very smoothly. The contract was completed on time, and the Queen had a lovely visit. When the Queen had gone back to England, Thomas promised that he would teach Percy and Toby all there was to know about the branch line. He taught them every nook and cranny. He taught Percy to whistle to every signal box, so that they knew he was there. And before long, all of Toby's parts were working at peak performance. Thomas even taught them how to run the line. They all hoped they'd never need to know how to do this, but when Thomas was sent for repairs and the diesel was sent as a replacement, they were very glad he did.